later in their lives as mulatto. Now, they didn't suddenly change, but it was interesting because one of the laws in the colony of Delaware was that an American Indian was defined as an individual who lived in the woods and ate primarily deer meat. So if you lived in a brick house and ate chicken, you were no longer legally considered an Indian. That is a fact. The state of Delaware wound up re-identifying Indians later on after the federal period came, and Indian was identified as a person that lived far away from Delaware. However, there are many of us that remain. Here in New Jersey and moving down into Delaware, because state lines didn't exist for us, there are numerous communities of American Indians that are continuing to live in communities straight through to this day. They didn't have some break and then suddenly came back together. They continued in the areas. In the northern regions, there's the Ramapo-Lenape Nation. They're both in New York and in New Jersey. You may know a little bit about them. If any of you saw the Sundance Channel's show a couple of years ago, The Red Road, that actually was loosely based on the Ramapo, and there were Ramapo that consulted on that show. There's also a special on HBO called Man vs. Ford. It's about Ford Motor Company poisoning one of their the areas of their homeland and the high rates of cancer that have resulted even this day. A little south of here, there's a community of the Sand Hill Indians. They're loosely organized, but the families have stayed in this area since ancient times. They're a blend of some of the Cherokee that migrated up into this region and intermarried with Lenape families that stayed. A little further down is the Powhatan-Lenape Nation. These are primarily Indians from Virginia and lower Delaware that migrated up and wound up intermarrying with the Lenape that had remained. My tribe, the Natchitoches-Lenape Tribal Nation, is in the area of Cumberland County, where we've been for thousands of years. That is actually the spot of first contact for that community. And if you were to look us up, you'd find many names that refer to us. The Indians of Cohansey Bridge, the Bridgeton Indians, all of those names refer to us, and that is the area where we have been since contact. Our chiefs were involved in the early treaties with the colonial powers that came here, and whenever the king and queen of Sweden come to visit, our chiefs are involved, because New Sweden, which was in southern New Jersey and northern Delaware, was in our land, and they still acknowledge that. In fact, my children were asked to help open the new embassy of Sweden in Washington, D.C. because of that 370-some-year relationship. The Lenape Indian tribe of Delaware, the people that live in a small community called Cheswold. For many years, they were called Moors, considered the original Moors of a place called Moor Tud, which is the old name of Cheswold. They've been recorded in that area since the late 1600s. Same families have continued. Some of the artifacts that you'll see today, I think all of the artifacts you'll see today, are actually their artifacts. I also am descended. These lower three symbols, these lower three tribes are all intermarried. It's the same people. You can't shake a stick without hitting a cousin. Down here, the Navajo Indian tribe, they're the southernmost of this region that I'm pointing to. They're in the Sussex County area of Delaware. I'd like to just focus in a little more on my own folks, the Natchitoches-Lenape. Our people are a continuing community made up of Natchitoches-Lenape families that remain. Tribal enrollment for our community requires a documented amount of blood quantum from the documented tribal citizens on our base roll to go back through history. It's extremely important, and our chief who is actually the gentleman in the middle between these two young girls, and this is my daughter right here, is concerned and consumed with trying to keep the tribe together. We have the issue of the county we're in being the place where some of the poorest people in the state live, and our folks are pretty poor. And opportunity tends to draw them out. But if too many people leave, the tribe begins to dissipate. So our goal is to try to provide services, try to provide opportunity, economic growth right where we are, educational opportunities, so that as our children grow, they want to stay nearby. And the tribe can be perpetuated from one generation to the next. Somebody just monitor my time. I don't have a rule. Interestingly enough, I talked about the difficulty with Christianity that many American Indians have. There are many American Indians that are Christian, but those that aren't often wind up being very vehement about Christianity because of what people who claim to be Christian did to our people. What's interesting is, however, my tribe, the Navajo Lenape people, would not be here if it wasn't for the churches. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, our churches began to form. Our people had been converted early on, and it was because of free core community churches that our folks were able to continue to live on the land. For us in South Jersey, actually, while we weren't converted by the Quakers were the ones that didn't mess with us. They left us alone by principle. The goal was to try to live in harmony with us, while so many were forced away. In Delaware, the congregations rose up primarily out of the Methodist communion, and they all of these churches became the government of the tribe, when having an outward government would have been punishable by law. Because that push to remove all Indians under President Jackson was not just for the Southwest. It encouraged people to attack you wholesale. However, our government being in these churches allowed us to maintain our communities for a couple of centuries. It wasn't until the 1900s that we began to reform tribal governments outside of the church itself. And this, by the way, is a common story for many of the tribes of first contact on the eastern coast. The tribe established schools in each of these communities outside of